It's the worst thing that's ever happened to me in my entire life. It's America's worst kept secret. Our overwhelming ability to abuse our children. It's like we've got that. We've just got that, right? Other countries don't really know about it. People on the coast probably don't hear much about it. But through the Bible Belt, it's like, if you're a queer kid, you're probably gonna get psychologically tortured for being queer. My name is Clare Killman. I am a philanthropist, political activist, and a board member for Conversion Therapy Dropout Network. I was 14 years old when I experienced the conversion therapy process. It happened in 2009 in Missouri. I was shuttled to St. Louis and locked in dark church basements with ex-gay pastoral staff, and they would show me propagandized video of like anti-LGBT sentiment, videos about the dangers of the LGBT lifestyle and the drug addiction and sexual promiscuity, disease-ridden individuals. I was forced to go to like pastoral counseling at my home church as well, but the conversion therapist would give my parents like sets of almost prescriptions, not drugs, but like ways to modify me, control my behavior. My head was shaved. They would burn my clothes, so I only had 2 pairs of pants and a t-shirt to go to school with. I had to sit through like behavioral modification. They'd modify like the way that I sat and the way that I talked. I was barred from seeing my friends because they had taken the place of God in my life. My parents were blamed for everything. Like the conversion therapist would say that I was the way that I was as it relates to my gender and sexuality, because it was their fault. They had neglected me in some way and they bought it like hook, line, and sinker. I was pulled out of public school and put in a private Baptist academy, and I was only allowed, my movement was restricted to church, school, and home. My parents had like a network of informants in my small town that would report back to them on my whereabouts, so I couldn't really get away with anything. I suffered a lot of psychological torture. They would strip search my room, and like when I got my vehicle, randomly just had no privacy. Got beat. It was the night that they found out, so I was outed. The night that they found out, I was pretty brutally assaulted almost. It was like I was beaten. And I was consistently forced to like stay up into the early hours of the morning reading Bible verses about how I'm like a poison to my community, and I was blamed for marital problems in my parents' relationship, vis-a-vis Bible verses. I was forced to do manual labor to toughen me up. It made me feel trapped in myself and in my environment. I was suicidal. Thought about killing myself every day. Just broken, like I was broken, like something was deeply, deeply wrong. That's another psychological facet I haven't yet shirked, is that on some level I still feel as though I have done something horrendous, that something about me is so wrong, so bad, that people in my life wanted to rip it out of me. that like I have done and committed an egregious fault. And so I've just felt like that consistently since 14, so about for the last decade. That's how it made me feel. It's like, I didn't even get the worst of it. Like, there are people who have to go through like induced vomiting, who have to like get electroshock therapy. And that happens in the United States. Like, that's just like a part of it. It's not unheard of. It's not uncommon to get stories like that, where people are being violently abused. Shit we aren't even allowed to do to terrorists anymore. Like, is fine to do to your children, as long as you do it with the love of God, for sure. I wound up shutting down emotionally. I remember this one night after being forced to stay up late and read about how I'm an abomination. I locked myself in a bathroom, cried, and then like swore to never let anyone see me cry again, and to get out as fast as I could. But the inevitable result was like me just shutting down emotionally. I just continued to not process that trauma for years. Felt like I couldn't trust anyone, specifically people in positions of authority, and with a system of informants that was continually reporting back to my parents and my community, was devoid of trust in my eyes. So, on my own. I'm like haunted by that process. It's like I am so paranoid constantly. I still have a hard time forgiving everyone who is involved in that. I have a hard time forgiving my community because they knew what was happening to me, right? It's like they fully understood how my parents were reacting to this and how the church kind of stepped in, and the abuse that I was suffering, and they just didn't do anything. It's like no one thought to stop this socially sanctioned abuse, and I gotta say, it makes me I have an entire bias against the community that I grew up in as a whole. Just cannot trust it still to this day. So I was asked by people who had no concept of what it means to think rationally, right? They've got this way of thinking about reality that builds itself on a foundation of absolutely no critical thinking whatsoever. They've got it all laid out for them in a book. God has all of the answers. It just wipes the board of their ability to critically think, right? And for something that they have no objectively verifiable evidence, like, say, the existence of God and God's word, they then asked me to rationalize both my gender and sexuality constantly. It's like I'm at 14 being put in a situation where I'm having to rationalize or form a rational basis for why I am the way that I am. I internalized so much of what was being force-fed to me, to the extent that I still wonder if I've done something wrong. Or I just wake up some days and feel like an abomination. I'll have literal full-on meltdowns where I call myself an abomination, like in tears, screaming about like how much of a freak I am. I'll call myself a chimera, like a science experiment, some unnatural product of aberrant thought patterns and whatever. Impacts that have sustained themselves throughout the years. Paranoia, thinking everyone's out to get me, not being able to trust the people closest to me, or anyone, really. Wary of anyone trying to preach to me. I don't go into churches. Can't. Hard. So, a religion as it's always existed has been like a system of control, right? They want to be able to exert control over a populace, specifically the working class in general. It's one facet of it. The other facet is the ability to control reproductive labor. So you can set the standard by which women's bodies are like supposed to act sexually, right? And then by extension, you can just like start regulating sexuality as a whole, where there are like codes of conduct that one can enforce on a populace through like their own gender, sexual orientations, or means of expressing themselves. It's like, it became very apparent during the entire process that the function of religion was to, one, curtail my ability to express myself. It's like very, very strange, right? Like, why is a religion with so much money, so much power, like so much else on its plate as far as like humanitarian crises that it could be exerting itself towards solving? Why is it so focused on queer people? Why does it not want identities like mine to exist? Because that's really what it wanted to do. It wanted to cull out aspects of my identity. Now, that's an impossibility. It's a myth, right? It's a myth that will ever happen. You can't rip out what is just you. What it really wanted to do was like stuff that in, make that entirely invisible. It wants what truths I know about myself to be invisible, to not get recognized, realized, or actualized. And I have lingering questions about like why that is. What about me is so scary to them? What about me is so frightening that like a 14-year-old who says that they're queer causes all of this mess, all of this psychological damage, all of these resources being spent to ensure that that never comes to fruition? What's there? I don't know, but I'm definitely willing to do whatever legwork I have to do to ensure that it doesn't happen to anyone else again. So I fought back during the process of conversion therapy in multiple ways. I wound up, by my very nature, I tend to be obstinate and challenge authority. And I was constantly pressed by all of the individuals involved with this to rationalize the basis of my identity, both on the count of my sexual orientation and my gender. And I had no rational basis, but in my opinion, I did my best to come up with strong arguments to support like why I was the way I was, or I would challenge or point out their own fallacies or hypocrisies and double standards there, because the basis upon which I was being persecuted stems from like a belief in a deity that they have no objectively verifiable evidence to support like the existence of. And so I was incredibly challenging on those fronts. I would also still pursue the actualization of my identity as much as possible and in as many little ways as I could get away with, even in secret. I was not in control of my own appearance, the way in which I visually communicated to anyone around me. I couldn't put anything on my person to identify myself with what I knew I was. That is an incredibly disorienting experience, to like not be able to recognize yourself, to like know that someone else's expectations of you are how you are to be recognized, it was like so psychologically jarring. Even in states where it's been banned, all you have to do as a conversion therapy organization is rebrand what type of therapy you're administering. It's like male help therapy or like male sexuality therapy. And like, it is still socially sanctioned. So there are always loopholes. If anything, I think that makes it more insidious, right? It's like these people are finding ways to consistently shirk any sort of regulation on their ability to abuse children. But that's just the church. The church has a long and colorful history of just abusing children. That's what it does. This entire process has drastically stunted my ability to both feel loved and like give love out to other people. It was really hard growing up, like having these people in your life say like, oh, we love you unconditionally, and like there's this entity out there that loves you in an unconditional way. And then all of a sudden it's like there are these conditions, very hard, harsh conditions associated with not only his love, but by extension, the love of my parents and my community. And so I have wonderful people in my life now who love me very much, and it's just hard to believe them. Can never tell if someone actually loves me, and I don't think I ever will be able to. If I could say one thing to the conversion therapist that administered my care, it's that I'm coming for any semblance of job security that you've got. I'm coming for you.